I'm assuming I'll go through the. I'll do the usual. Welcome everybody to Leadership Board. I'm not sure if the recording started yet. No.
Yeah, it started.
All right. Okay, that's fine. So I'll do the usual pre-meeting statement about the meeting will be recorded. It will be available on the council's webcast for the public to see. Members should be aware that anything you put in the chat box could also be published in the public forum, and if you can please mute if you're not speaking at the time, and that includes phones as well for members who are coming in on a phone, just to try and keep down on the background noise that sometimes happens. So with that, I'll start with the agenda. And is there any apologies?
No apologies. Councillor Hart still hasn't joined the meeting though.
All right. Are you wanting a few minutes, or is he indicating he's having trouble joining?
Eddie, you're muted.
Still muted, Eddie.
There was a fair bit of trouble this morning, but I presume you're not that far from him, so I can only, maybe he's just slept in.
Well, we always like to give members a few minutes to see if they can join us, and I'm not sure if any of the officers want to try and give him a phone and see if he's responsive. No. I went quiet.
One of the officers will contact him.
Okay, that's fine, thanks. It's a wee bit, one of the downsides of the virtual meetings is and I think even the committees, I think we have I'm not sure, I think there's a 5-minute rule or 10-minute rule, quorum wise and things like that as well. So try and apply a wee bit of latitude to members just in case they're getting problems just logging in.
Ian, if you want to carry on, it's okay. If he's late, he's late.
No, that's fine, Eddie. I'll take it from yourself as the go ahead on it, just to make sure he's
on about me.
Oh, all right. Right, that's fine. You've arrived. Okay.
I've been here for a few minutes now.
All right, thanks. Okay. Is there any declarations of interest?
Yes, there will be from me. Councillor McCartan. I'm a member of the Renfrewshire Leisure Board, so I'm declaring an interest in numbers 9 and 10.
I am the same as chair of the board, and thanks Eileen for saying the numbers this time. We should take it turnabout always.
Yeah. Okay, no other indications. Just to point out as well, it's been highlighted that there's no page numbers on the document. So if any members refer to a particular page, we'll also give a few seconds for members to try and get to it using the PDF number system at the top. Sometimes a few pages off as well, so that'll help us to get there. Okay, can we move on to item 1, the budget monitoring report? Can we agree the recommendations? Sorry, John, Councillor McIntyre.
Thanks, convener. I just had a question on 3.4 under revenue, the Health and Social Care Partnership. Scottish Government is going to make good any of the costs associated with the pandemic, but we still have a 1.971 million core underspend. And I would like sort of some details on the vacancies and how many of those vacancies are frontline staff in care homes. And just given obviously the effect that the these are very demanding jobs at normal times, but just under current circumstances, is there anything we can do to try and increase our recruitment of these roles rather than rolling it over? Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Siona, you want to pick that one up? You're on mute just now, Siona.
Too many meetings today as well, I'm afraid. Just deciding to mute myself for everybody's good. The vacancies are primarily care at home vacancies. We have both recruitment and retention issues in and around care at home, less so within the care homes. Primarily care homes are in the third or independent sector and are not within our own gift at this point. Within our own care homes, we've actually got enhanced staffing in place and are using the COVID funding to support that at the moment. So I've put nursing staff and additional shift staff into place. I've also redeployed, or deployed is the correct word, deployed some of our staff where services are not currently open to support the more social aspects of life within the care homes. And we've done that during the pandemic at this point. So the vacancies, we will take forward some proposals to the Integration Joint Board to rationalise out some of the vacancies. Some of them also arise particularly within mental health because of the shortage of some particular specialist posts, which are also quite highly paid, such as psychologists and psychiatrists.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you.
Is that okay, John? Yep, covered. Okay, I don't see other questions. Can we agree item 1, budget monitoring? Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll just assume acceptance unless I hear otherwise. Item 2 is the climate change, the minutes of the climate change subcommittee, which I think are for noting. And item 3 is a climate change update report. Is there any questions on this? Can we agree recommendations? Agreed. Okay, that's item 2 and 3. Sorry, Councillor Doig.
It was actually item 4, and I was just a bit too premature.
Getting ahead. Right, that's fine. Okay, item 4, Alcohol and Drugs Commission, local partnership response. Councillor Doig.
Thanks, Sabina. I'd like to say I think this is the best report that I've seen in 8 years as a councillor before this council on this particular issue. And most elected members will be aware that it's an issue that's close to my heart because of the kind of work that I do. I'd like to commend everybody that's been involved in the and I'd like to make a few observations. If you look at item 4, the first page, clause 1.3, notes that there have been gaps in support in the past, and it talks about the key issue of trauma and causing alcohol and drug addiction. Now, I think these are two fundamental observations that have been made. If you look at action point 3, it talks about the need for community-based support. Then that's vital, convener, because you have to go where the problem is. That's essential. You need to be on hand in order to help. But a help up actually means rehab, and that's why action point 5 is also very relevant. Action point 5 has taken a massive leap forward in my view, because it's recognising the need for bed-based rehab services. The people in the west of Scotland can wait up to a month for rehab services because in the last 15 years, the number of residential and rehab services, both in the public and private sector, have been, for whatever reason, different reasons, has declined. If you go back 15 years ago, convener, there was at least 3 or 4 facilities that people in the Renfrewshire area could access. And gradually, for different reasons, these are no more. So there seems to be a change in heart on the part of the Scottish Government, which I very much welcome as well, because the only way to deal with this problem is 2 ways. You tackle it at the source, and that's why you need to have continued support for community-based services, but you also need to take people out of that community at times in order to really get them centred in their lives, and that's important. So this is a step forward. This is the first time I've seen in any report before the council a recognition of that. Now, action point 12 talks about greater understanding of the impact of trauma, trauma is related to one word: abuse. And whether it's mental, physical, sexual, nobody drinks 1.5 litres of spirits a day for months on end because they like the taste. And you'll find that whether the root is mental health issues and they're self-medicating, or whether it's abuse and trauma, recognition of the role of trauma, I think, is also a major point forward. Action point 14 talks about policies that recognise the impact of alcohol supply. There seems to be clear statistical evidence now, convener, that minimum pricing of alcohol has had a positive effect. So I think we should all be looking across the country at, how do we build on that success? Action point 15, as somebody who used to be on the licensing board, the on-sales trade, I think, has changed totally in the last 40 years. The emphasis is now on food as well as in wet sales. How can we do more to encourage pubs to be primarily family-focused outlets? So I think there's a lot of scope there for partnership between the licensing board and the HCSP. Action point 26, that's my last observation. The biggest trigger for relapse in the last year has been the temporary closure of so many recovery groups and support groups due to COVID-19. So they have to have proper funding. The right kind of social support is essential and it has to be properly funded. But all in all, I think this is a really excellent report and I commend Councillor Jacqueline Cavern for the part she's played in this. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Andy, I think the comments are welcome because it was a collaboration, obviously, with a lot of different individuals inputting their own professional views onto it. And the report was needed to try and collate all the relevant information to Renfrewshire and also to try and align it with Scottish Government policy as well in the same area, which hopefully will start that journey to try and tackle it at community level. The issues of alcohol and drug misuse. I don't like using the term abuse. I always like the term misuse in a way. With that, Jacqueline, you're next. Yeah, I've got you, Jim, in a wee minute.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I welcome Councillor Doig's comments because I also share his views. It's an excellent report. And when we established the commission and finalised it, we always said that the recommendations wouldn't just sit on a shelf. So the establishment of the programme board and the extensive action plan shows that we mean business. And I'd also like to say how closely the Alcohol Drugs Partnership has worked with the Commission. It's been a really, really good collaboration and we've worked hard to make sure that this action plan is in place. Also, Ian, you talked about Scottish Government. Renfrewshire's recommendations have been mirrored in what the Scottish Government have been recommending. And as Councillor Doig said, residential rehab is one of those things. And Councillor Doig, your voice was heard loud and clear in Renfrewshire, so I knew you would be pleased to see that in our action plan. So I think that was all I had to say. But yeah, an excellent report. And again, I was just pleased to be a part of the Commission.
Okay, thanks very much. Jim, Councillor Sheridan.
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's just my wee hand's missing up here, so I can't do it. I don't know, somebody's stole my wee hand. But anyway, moving on, Chair. I agree with Andy Doig, and there are many aspects of this report that's to be applauded. But again, the report has been, and it's no fault of the authors, but the report has been somewhat superseded by events at the Scottish Government and indeed the new monies that's been brought forward. And so whilst I welcome the report, I think there is an opportunity here for us to look forward and how best we can use, for the users anyway, the new monies that's been involved. And I think that we've put on record our support and thanks for the University of the West of Scotland who published the systematic policy failures across not just local but national government as well, and nobody could put it better for the systematic failures than the First Minister herself, who called it indefensible in the terms of 9,000 deaths in a decade due to drug and alcohol misuse, as you would say. But there's a few questions that I would like to put to the convener about how best we move forward recognising the work that's been going on so far. There has been an additional £250 million allocated to drug and alcohol service provision. This was announced on the 20th of January. Renfrewshire Alcohol and Drug Partnership received additional monies in early February for residential rehab, increased access to treatment and harm reduction. And to see how there's allocated given on the Scottish Government's website, 65% of that was for rehab and has been ring-fenced. 65% of that is for rehab and 35% is to improve access to treatment. So I'd like to know what support has the ADP been given to grassroots community organisations with the announcement of additional monies on the 14th of February, and how will these monies be spent effectively to reduce drug harm and reduce drug deaths? And finally, I would just like to say that I think that we can make more use of what, and it's a saying I'm not particularly familiar with, but they call them lived experience people. That's people that's been through the system and suffered and come back through the other end. So I would like to know how best we can use their services and indeed their experience going forward, and how best this money can be used to ensure that every pound of taxpayers' money goes towards the people who need it and deserve it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure which officer will be able to pick up the points you've made. I don't want to give you the wrong information. Sandra, are you able to advise? Because it covers financial and HSCP as well, to a certain extent.
I mean, Laura might want to say a few words, and then Siona as well, because the ADP is in the partnership. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Yep, in response to your questions, Councillor Sheridan, I think Siona will want to come in on some of the specific recent funding announcements. One of the points that I've made within the paper is the commitment of both the Health and Social Care Partnership and the Council to work together to make the most of all of the sources of funding that are coming in. So the programme board that is referenced in the paper, that is one of the things that we will look at in terms of what gaps there are and where the funding should be addressed or directed to address some of those particular issues. I think your point in relation to the importance of lived experience is really fundamental in terms of the work that we're going to be doing going forward. Myself and Christine Laverty, who's the head of Learning Disabilities, Mental Health and Addiction within the Health and Social Care Partnership, have already had some initial conversations in relation to that, and we met recently with the chair of the National Drug Deaths Task Force, who has urged us as well as to engage with people with lived experience who have come through a journey and can offer so much to people in terms of that peer support and that expertise and just that life experience, but to make sure that we don't miss out on engaging with people who are actively using drugs and alcohol and learning from their immediate experiences. So that is something that we're currently discussing in terms of how we can meaningfully involve people in the process, whether it's through some sort of forum or other kind of avenues that we could use to best do that. Because I think, as Councillor Cameron pointed out, we don't want this to be a report that is on a shelf. We want it to be a living document and that we continue to engage with local people around it. So I hope that provides some assurance, but we certainly will be seeking to involve people as widely as we possibly can.
And just finally, Laura, could you identify how best that we can get this information and indeed the finance down into the grassroots, because that's where we need to go, deep under the grassroots. Do we have a plan for that to happen?
One of the particular elements in the recommendations and one of the funding proposals was around a kind of change fund, a recovery fund, and that really was at the heart of that, Councillor Sheridan, in terms of we, through the Commission's work, engaged with a whole range of different organisations, and the HSCP and the ADP already have a network of groups and organisations that they do work with very closely, but there's a range of probably smaller groups and organisations that could come forward and could develop new ideas if they had some initial funding to support those. So that is very much part of that particular proposal, to make sure that we support groups who are working actively with people at the moment and are often more able to work with people within their community in quite a person-centred, supportive way as well. So that certainly is part of our approach going forward and part of the funding that has been allocated.
Okay, Ian, thanks. Many thanks. I look forward to the outcomes. Okay, thanks for that. I've got Eddie, the next.
Obviously, most of it's been said. We had a good discussion on this morning with Jacqueline at the officer members group, or member officers group, something similar. And it's good to see that every single person, I presume, on the councillors agree with us. It's something that we need to tackle as a society, and the money has to keep coming, because there's no point in going down 2 or 3 or 4 years in this, and people get hopefully back on the right track, but then we fail them with not keeping the money flowing to keep them where they want to be. As I said this morning, nobody wants to be like this. They want to have a decent life, and they're entitled to a decent life. So I'm glad that we're all agreeing on this. Jacqueline's doing a good job.
All right, thanks for that. Councillor McGurk, Marie.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Sorry. Thanks very much for that, Councillor Nicholson. First of all, I'd like to say, yeah, it's an excellent report, and well done, Jacqueline, for this report, and we all unanimously agree on that. Fundamentally, it's also important, apart from helping people that we're helping here, the wider community will also be helped and assisted too. And that's where quite often we as councillors get the issues are raised with us about individuals in our community who need this help. So I think this is a win-win for all of us. I think we have to all work collectively together to make sure that we can deliver this, and that's from housing to the community, the widest community, to make them fully aware of what we're trying to do so that they can support the people that need help in the community as well. So well done, and well done, Siona, for taking it forward too. Thank you for that.
Okay, thanks for that. Siona, you want to come in and cover the question about funding, etc.? You're on mute again, Siona. 3 strikes, you're out.
Well, that would be fine too, actually.
Wait a minute, it's supposed to be not an advantage.
It's okay. I just wanted to underwrite, I suppose, everything that Laura has said. We are working very closely to ensure that the additional funding that's coming down through the ADP mechanism, which mostly is single year funding, so there are still some issues in terms of keeping that flow going, but it's about working together and making sure that we align both our strategic planning but also our operational delivery, and that we reach the areas really that we do need to reach, including the hard to reach people who are currently using drugs and alcohol. A lot of the additional funding is also in and around the residential resources, in order to provide people with that kind of level of support in order to help them on their journey of recovery. So I just wanted to realign, I suppose, and to be really clear that we are working together both strategically and operationally to deliver the services.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm not seeing any other sort of questions or hands up for this item. With that, can we agree the recommendations in item 4, Alcohol and Drugs Commission? Okay, thanks everybody. COVID-19 pandemic, item 5, the COVID-19 support to local businesses, pages 43 to 52. Can we agree the recommendations in the report? Agreed. I'm getting a lot of nodding heads there. Good, thank you very much. Item 6, employability programme and support, 53 to 60 pages. Councillor McIntyre, John, you're first out the trap there.
Thanks, Ian. It was just a question on points 4 and 5, UK Government Kickstarter scheme and the Scottish Government Young Persons scheme. I understand that certainly the UK Government scheme, Renfrewshire Council can participate in, as can Health and Social Care Partnership, Renfrewshire Leisure, etc. I was just wondering if there was a way where these schemes could be used to offer enhanced terms to fill the vacancies that we discussed under point 1 in the Health and Social Care Partnership. Thanks.
Okay. I think Ruth Cooper might be best placed to answer that one.
Yeah, thanks, convener.
Yeah, Ruth, okay.
Yeah, so one of the conditions of the grant fund is that we don't use it for existing vacancies, but only use it for new and additional opportunities for young people. What we are doing though, Councillor McIntyre, is looking at a range of traineeship type positions where we're bringing people in under Kickstart, and we're already talking to the Health and Social Care Partnership around this, to offer traineeships which could then lead to filling the vacancies at the end of it. So we're basically preparing people for work in different sectors, and particularly where health and social care struggle with vacancies across the board. I think care does across the board anyway. So the way we're using it is in line with the funding, and we still provide the opportunity, and it'll be a quick move then potentially into vacancies at the end of it.
Okay, you all right with that, John?
That's great, thanks.
All right, thanks. Eddie?
I just very quickly, I just hope, and I said this when we were given a briefing on it, I just hope this isn't turning into a YTS type scheme. The money needs to continually, again, this is another one, because if we can give youngsters jobs, then they may not go into drugs and other things as well. So it's something that we need to give youngsters the best start we can. So hopefully the money continues to come in and give younger folk a better start in life.
Okay, thanks. The comments are noted on that, Eddie, because we've had a long, I would say, successful over different administration support for young people in employment, and there's always been that emphasis at the back of it. I know Ruth knows that, knows my views on it about young people having the opportunity to try and gain employment, obviously at the back of any sort of particular schemes they go through. Yeah. Being one of the original Yoppers myself, I understand that process. Andy, there's that many Andys, Johns and Jims in this, so I have to, excuse me when I just say, Councillor Doig.
I think there's been a number of constituents in the Johnstone Town Centre area, Ian, who fall into the category of being fairly newly self-employed, and it's just so tragic that their bid into the world of self-employment has came at the time of an international pandemic. And I was glad to see that section in the paper and the paragraph that alluded to their particular vulnerability in terms of bigger businesses, even small businesses that have been well established, might be able to weather the storm a wee bit better. But if you're starting out self-employed at a time such as now, it's very, very difficult. So I was pleased to see there was a lot of support there for them. And I would echo the point that's been made actually by Councillor Devine. It's important that this kind of support continues, because there's going to be a massive economic rebuilding will need to take place. And we need to make sure that the economy is nurtured along. We can't just allow things to be blasted by free market forces. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the support for those who are facing redundancy, and I've had a conversation with Ruth already about this. I mean, I was disappointed to learn that the support isn't that great, and it probably needs an influx of cash. But also the support would also need you'd also need to look at, see the whole thing through from when the person gets made redundant, the support that they get, and where that person may end up. And I was wondering if Ruth could tell us how we go about doing that, and how much kind of resources would we need to to see that and get a proper service to those who are facing redundancy.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Hart. I think one of the main issues that we're facing with the redundancy situation is the lack of support for those who have been made redundant to retrain, and the support that's come to the council in terms of the PACE support is really around staffing. So there's an individual support to the person or to the business to help them through. The biggest level of funding that we're experiencing that is not there is the funding for the individual to then retrain. And it's, as you'll know, it's about the timing of that. You know, it's not any good to be made redundant in November and have to wait to August to start a college course. You know, we really want to have some form of flexible fund that would allow us to bring forward any training as quickly as possible. In the negotiations around redundancy, this is often done between the Scottish Government, PACE, which is primarily SDS, and the employer. And what often happens is that a range of funding is available to people in that situation, but this isn't happening at the moment. And we think it's just because of the scale of the situation just now. West College Scotland have got some flexible money that they can use, and so does Skills Development Scotland. But in all honesty, it's not even close to what might be required. So from our side, because our role in the PACE partnership is effectively around support to the individual, and that's what they're bolstering through the grant that is mentioned in the paper, we are able to provide the one-to-one support and to bring them through the various employability services, but we have to wait for them really to be unemployed before a lot of the funding that we have could kick in for support. So there is a bit of an imbalance there. In terms of doing something better, I think it is about further, dialogue with Scottish Government to say that we need more funding for people while we're still in work, but know that they're being made redundant, to be able to retrain. And at the moment, the responsibility there broadly lies with Skills Development Scotland. But I can certainly bring it up, Councillor Hart, at the various meetings that we have, and I'd indicated to you that we are trying to work as a city region on this and pool resources. But I can certainly raise it, and if we get something set up, I can certainly come back and talk about that a bit more.
Okay, Jim.
If I may come back in for this, just very briefly. Thanks for that, Ruth. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of people already been made redundant, and there's much more expected and on its way. So that we really must get this right and not let people just, go down the stank, as we say. But thanks.
I think, if you don't mind me coming back in, I think a lot of the issue at the moment as well is that a lot of the training isn't happening. There is online training and support available, but a lot of the more traditional training that might have happened isn't just in the same way. So, we've got one crisis with people leaving work, or being forced out of work, and another one that we can't actually run a lot of the training. But I certainly take that up with those that I work with and see if there's anything we can do.
Thanks, Ruth.
Okay, thanks for that. Eileen.
Yes, thanks, Ian. I'd been going to ask the issue about funding for people before they actually become redundant, but you've largely clarified that. I just wanted to say, I mean, I know in the past few years, Ruth and her team have done a huge amount to do with the employment of young people, and it's absolutely an enormous contribution that they have made with this Kickstart system. I like the fact that she is looking at doing the training, doing the Kickstart scheme, but also with an eye to what vacancies are there, whether it's in the council, whether it's in the HSCP, or whether it's in private businesses, to make sure that when young people do a certain amount of training and they come to the end of that training, they do actually have somewhere to go. As I think you or somebody else said, Ian, the old YOP schemes and all these things, they were a quick fix, looked good, and it almost demoralised young people even more when they had nothing at the end of it. So I think the idea that you can do the training and then, as that is happening, start to try and match them up with vacancies around the place and to get them into proper jobs, I think is a huge step forward in actually managing this service. I hope it works the way you are describing, Ruth. I'm sure it will if you've got anything to do with it. But I do think it is very, very good if we can try and tie people up with the training and then into work. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point. Can we agree recommendations item 6? Employability programme and supports. Okay, agreed. Okay, item Andy, hold on a wee bit, Andy. I think it's item 7, Renfrewshire City Deal projects final delivery phase. Councillor Doig. I'm assuming that's the item you're wanting on.
It is Ian, thank you.
Good.
I mean, it's been a long 6 or 7 year haul for these projects, and I think, despite the consistent criticism I've had about the spread of resources, there's no doubt in the current climate they're very much needed. I mean, what we need to recover from this pandemic is a good old-fashioned touch of Keynesian economics, and the City Deal is certainly. But the specific question I have, Ian, for your good self is, given the fixed nature of the framework that determines the process for City Deal decision making, what can we do in future to ensure a less centralised City Deal structure that serves Renfrewshire better? Because, as you well know, I've consistently said that the only thing that bothers me about the City Deal provision is that key major towns in West Renfrewshire, like Johnston and Linwood, have just completely been left out of that equation. And I think we can't go on, can't continue in this vein. I've often worried about the fact that the City Deal is far too Glasgow-centric, that Glasgow City has the permanent, for example, the permanent convenership of the body. I think these things should be in rotation. I'm only going over, I don't want to repeat old arguments that we've gone through at full council, but I feel within the council as a whole, across the political spectrum, I think there's agreement that the City Deal should really be formulated in a different way to give each member authority more of a say.
Okay, I'll quickly, I think we've had this discussion, Andy, on a number of occasions, either at board or in person. The City Deal projects that we have just now are coming at the COVID side of it all are pretty monumental for Renfrewshire in a way, with the expansion of the manufacturing capacity and base and employment, and put forward a positive proposal for Renfrewshire amongst the sort of economic partners we have. With regards to the City Deal, I think my views on that are quite well known. I mean, I think, as I said, they are going through a review just now, prompted, I think, by either Audit Scotland at the time as well. They are going through a review just now about the processes, how the decision-making processes, and the question about chair rotation, visiting all the different council areas, etc., has all been raised as part of that just now. That process hasn't finished as yet, and I think, if I was being honest about it, most of the council leaders who are around the table, the focus on the projects that they have in their areas as well, to ensure they're successful and they're delivered, you know, in time. And as I say, I think from memory, when the City Deal was set up, the funding was half and half from the Scottish Government and from the UK Government. And I think their input into that process is quite significant as well, as to how, you know, the gateway review process and all that aspect of it, to ensure that the programme was delivered the way they wanted it delivered as well. So there's been quite a few actors involved in all the way the City Deal has been set up at the start. But I think as all these projects in this first round of money starts to be delivered on the ground in the City Deal, or the City region, the Cabinet, will start to evolve a bit more into what they're going to look like in the future. Councils will start to look at what exactly is the City Regional Cabinet for, what's its role and remit, and the democratic accountability aspect of it all as well. So that's starting just now. I think will result in a change in the way that the Cabinet makes decisions. It's always been a criticism that we've levelled when we're in opposition as well about it. As I say, so it's ongoing just now, and any members can get details about that process, even just now, if they want to see at what stage it's at. But as I say, it is ongoing, and hopefully it will lead to some.
I think that's good, Ian, because I mean, as you will be well aware, Audit Scotland have been in particular quite scathing about the governance structures of the city deal. So it's good that there's pressure both within and out with to change.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is moving just now, but from Renfrewishire's perspective, our priorities, I see it, is delivering these major infrastructure projects, because it will stimulate our economic base a lot more, I would say, than some other councils have got projects in the pipeline from the city deal. Okay, so Councillor John McIntyre. John.
Thanks, Ian. I've got 4 questions. They're basically all centred around the airport access project. Some of them I think might be for officers, some of them might be for you, so I'll just take them point by point. The first one is 6.1, the latest incarnation of the airport access project, the cable pooled transit system's been shelved, and 6.3 references the Connectivity Commission, which was commissioned by Glasgow City Council, and we were not part of that. Why is that body informing the process, and when we were not members, and have we asked to be members of the Connectivity Commission, were we refused a seat at the table?
I could probably answer some of the details around that. Sandra would probably be best placed to maybe answer some of the mechanisms behind it. The airport access rail link, it wasn't shelved so much as when the announcement for NMIS was made. I asked the officers, and I asked the officers at City Deal as well, what would be the implications if we could extend the airport rail link into the NMIS site? Because to my mind, it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't look at that prospect of that being extended. It made sense because there's obviously issues, I believe, with the NMIS site with regards to the amount of land it'll be taking up the cars parking there, and obviously the road infrastructure around the M8 and the White Cart Viaduct, etc. So it made sense to have some sort of review or look at the transport link, which would carry on from the airport into the NMIS site as part of the project, because that's quite a significant change when we got the AMIDS site and the funding from the Scottish Government to deliver the NMIS, etc. So that started that process of review. From what I'm aware of, the Connectivity Commission, Glasgow City Council started that process. They did do it via Glasgow City Council. It wasn't done through the City Cabinet. It was their process, and if anybody knows Glasgow City Council, I've often said this before, and being a Glaswegian, I don't mind saying it, they sort of almost have an ownership view of Glasgow Airport and forget the bit of Renfrewshire in between it. So they started the Connectivity Commission, and they looked at how the airport rail link might connect into a metro system in their area. And what they came to a conclusion was that the proposal that was there wouldn't necessarily fit their metro system. And then they wanted to make sure whatever was built for the airport rail link would fit into their metro system. And that's how that process started to connect each other. And then a strategic review of transport in Scotland came about as well. So that's my understanding of it. It was timing of certain things that came together at the same time. And there was discussions held with myself and other group leaders about how the airport rail link and the funding that was earmarked for it would be retained for the airport rail link connection to Gilmour Street, and also the fact that ensuring that our officers would be at the table for the Connectivity Commission as well, as and when it progressed through. And that assurance was sought and we got it. So we are at that table, as you say, to ensure that Glasgow Airport we have a say in the Airport Rail Link and how it connects to the wider Glasgow Connectivity Commission, as and when, if that happens.
Before you bring the officers in, that's kind of led on to some other questions. So at the City Deal Cabinet, when this decision was made, was there a vote? Did you agree with this? Because what's happened is we were the lead authority for the Airport Rail Link project. That's now gone. And we were the lead authority when it was the tram train system, when it went from Glasgow Airport to Paisley-Gilmer Street into Glasgow. It now appears that when the Airport Rail Link is going to be from Glasgow Airport to Paisley-Gilmer Street, it's now Glasgow's the lead authority, which seems to be the exact opposite of what you're suggesting. Glasgow's taking control over the project. I don't have an issue with them having a tram scheme or a wider project, but the problem is we need an airport rail link now, and this is the third scheme has now just been paused to go in for yet another scheme, and it looks like we're looking at a tram again, which sort of fit in with a Glasgow tram system, but we just get rid of a tram system project 2 years ago. We didn't want to go ahead with that. So I think this is Glasgow's basically taken over the project, and it's going to get kicked into the long grass. Specifically on 6.6 City Deal funding, some City Deal funding's been taken away from the Glasgow Airport Access Project to fund the feasibility for the wider metro scheme. How much money is that, and how will that money be made up? If money is spent on a feasibility system for a wider metro, and then eventually we get back to some incarnation of a Glasgow Airport rail link, we're going to have less funds to do it because it's going to be spent on a Glasgow metro system, which will cost billions and billions of pounds. We have a limited budget. We could have done a Glasgow Airport rail link. We've kicked it into a wider scheme and lost control of the project. I think also specifically, and I don't know if this is for the officers, if Glasgow is the lead authority, what happens to our City Deal team, and what happens to all the work that we have done up to this point? Because it appears we're about to start on yet another different type of system, and you know, some countries would have built an airport rail link several times. I mean, this has been on 20 years now. Garrow was suggested, then it failed. Then we had the tram train, then that didn't proceed. Then we had this pooled cable transit system, which apparently had a positive business case, but despite that, that's been paused again. And now we've gone into this wider system where Glasgow City Council is now the lead authority instead of Renfrewshire Council. So we've lost control and we've lost money. Okay.
Sandra, you indicate you want to come in and pick up some of the
I can
questions
clarify
here.
Some of those points, if that's helpful. Councillor Nicholson, I mean, I think going back just to the issue of the Connectivity Commission, you're right, Councillor McIntyre, that was commissioned by excuse me, the City Council rather than excuse me, the City Region Cabinet, and if my memory serves me correctly, that was done in that way. It was a short life group of independent people, independent of the Cabinet and the City Council itself, and it was focused on the city's transport problems and issues and challenges. So that was its original remit. So it wasn't a city region remit that the Commission were given. It was confined to the City Council boundaries, and therefore was taken forward by the City Council. The Commission, as I understand it, took a decision on their own that because of I suppose the strategic importance of the airport to the city's transport systems and such like, that they kind of took it upon themselves to comment on the airport access project, even although it might not have been in their defined remit from the outset. And those recommendations, as a result of that, were considered by the City Region Cabinet when the report was produced, and it was decided at that point, as we've outlined in the report, to pause the business case that had been developed and considered by the Cabinet, one that would work between the airport and Paisley Gilmer Street and provide that element of the link to do the wider study. So that's what's underway just now. In terms of who plays the lead role, you're right, we were the lead council for the sort of procurement of the work around the original airport access project. But it was a project that was jointly led by Glasgow City and Renfrewshire Council. We just were the lead on some of the procurement issues. And certainly in discussions with the Chief Executive of Glasgow City Council, I felt it would be inappropriate for me to be bringing procurement reports relating to a transport system that was actually more appropriate to the Glasgow City region, the Glasgow City boundary, to Renfrewshire Council board. So, for example, if we had retained the lead on the procurement, I would be bringing forward procurement reports relating to Glasgow City Council's transport system, which I don't think you would find appropriate, and I don't think Glasgow would either. So it was a.
But the reverse can't be appropriate either, though.
Well, if you let me finish, Councillor McIntyre, it was agreed that Glasgow City would take the lead on the commissioning of the consultancy for the full metro system, which I agreed to, and that for the South Clyde growth corridor, of which the link between Glasgow Airport and Paisley Gilmer Street is a small part, and that's the bit that we've got the city deal funding for, then I'm still attending joint meetings with Glasgow City Council's Chief Executive to oversee that work, and it's in turn reported to the City Region Cabinet, and obviously the leader sits on that representing the council. The funding element, I think Barbara Walker will keep me right here, but I think it was about £500,000, up to £500,000 of funding was agreed by the Cabinet to commission the initial feasibility studies. I don't believe anything like that has been spent at this point in time. And I guess the other thing to point out in relation to that is that the initial focus of the Glasgow Metro feasibility work is on what's called the South Clyde growth corridor, which includes the link between the airport and Paisley Gilmer Street. So it's still been given priority within the overall project, and therefore, and there is agreement and understanding at a cabinet level that none of the funding for the link between the airport and Paisley Gilmer Street will be used for the wider metro system. That has all to be allocated to that particular part of the metro system when it is finally decided upon. And I suppose the reason that the lead role, which I know you're concerned about, was with Renfrewshire to begin with, was that physically that part of the infrastructure was confined to Renfrewshire Council boundaries, and obviously that's no longer the case. So, Councillor Nicholson, those were the comments that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay. John, are you want to come back in?
Yeah, I still find it difficult where we were the lead authority, where the previous scheme, the tram train, was the new build element was all in Renfrewshire, and then there was the continuation in existing infrastructure into Glasgow. Whereas now we have funding for only the airport rail link. The rest of the tram scheme is not funded, and I think it's a concern that when the reduced scheme is entirely in Renfrewshire, I think we should have retained control over that. I don't think we should have given it to Glasgow. I think giving it to the metro system it's a very ambitious project and it's years away. And I think even if it works, we will suffer. It will be a huge delay. But my final point is there seems to be a desire to have a wider system that links the hospital, Braehead, Glasgow Airport investment area. That's all admirable, but every incarnation of the Glasgow Airport rail link, the business case depended and was improved substantially if there was less stops between Glasgow city centre and the airport. So that's why the previous scheme was just one stop at Gilmer Street was better. You want a direct service. If you have a service which goes through Braehead, through the hospital, and has multiple stops, it is not as desirable to the airport. And the project was there for Glasgow Airport. And I think given the circumstances in COVID and given the position the airport's in now, I think this should be delivered immediately. We should be building it now while the airport is quiet, and it should be part of a recovery scheme. I think this is a most regrettable set of circumstances.
Okay, thanks. Sandra, you indicated, was it accidental?
Yeah, I suppose just to again try to reassure Councillor McIntyre that we do still have a joint lead role on that element of the project, but the procurement elements, that's the lead role that has changed. It's not that we're excluded from the development of the project, and I suppose all you mentioned, all the work that we've done, all of that has been consumed within the project team that are looking at the revised scope that's underway. So just to, I suppose, reassure and understand the concerns around timescales for delivery and such like, but you know, that was the decision that was taken, and unfortunately construction can't be underway at this point in time because of that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Eddie.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what John McIntyre has said, and it does seem to me to be that Glasgow seem to want it Glasgow's way. They want everything for themselves. I'm disappointed that we haven't even come to a decision yet what kind of rail link, whatever you want to call it, has even been decided. Glasgow, to me, Glasgow want to delay this as long as they possibly can to see if everybody else gets fed up and Glasgow can get more money. And I think, as John said, McIntyre said, I think it is about nearly 20 years since we started seriously looking at this, and it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. In fact, if we'd have went ahead with some sort of Garrow, it would have been up and running by now. But that's in the past. I think, to be fair to Glasgow, Glasgow did own the airport at one time, if I'm right. Is that correct?
I think if memory serves, they owned it prior to it being denationalised, I think is another word for it. To BA, I think so.
Again, I'm really, really happy to say it's taken us 6 years. I think we started this in 2014. A lot of us have got kind of fed up waiting. But we got the biggest share of the money, I think, Ian, is that right? We got something like 27% of the money for Renfrewshire. And to answer Andy, I never got a bridge in Glenburn. However, I realise that what's going to happen is that once all these building projects start, the people in Paisley, Johnston, Linwood will hopefully be able to get decent, well-paid jobs here. So actually, the sooner we start building these projects and getting on with it, the sooner all of our constituents will have some sort of better tomorrow. Because obviously, once that money starts coming in, it'll start circulating in Renfrewshire as a whole, and that's what we need. We need more jobs with more money coming in, and hopefully more people moving into Renfrewshire, in particular Paisley.
Okay,
Cheers.
Thanks, Eddie. Eileen?
Yes, thanks, Ian. I had been going to echo most of what John McIntyre said, but I certainly disagree with his last comments on numbers of stops. I mean, the fact is, this document was signed 7 years ago. All we appear to have had was a lot of talk, feasibility schemes, consultations, findings. You know, we've had one or two very good positive processes, the cabled pool transport system, which I thought was finally going to go ahead because, as others have said, you know, we need to get things on the ground. But all we seem to have had over the last 7 years was talk and more talk, and somebody coming up with another idea and somebody putting it in, and we have another feasibility study. We absolutely need to get things on the ground, because otherwise people are just looking at these organisations. They'll look at the council, they'll look at Glasgow, and they'll just say, what are they there for? Because all they are doing is talking about things and nothing ever gets done. I would certainly, as I say, disagree with what John said about the numbers of stops. I mean, I can remember 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago talking about what has now been called the South Clyde scheme, where it was coming from the city centre, linking up the hospital, Braehead, Renfrew, all these places. And, you know, that was a very substantial and very positive scheme that if people in the city deal had looked at that, you know, again, we could have had it by this time decided, planned, you know, the process in being, don't know how much of the building work would have started by this time because of COVID, but I mean, we could have been moving forward and people could have been seeing the difference. I just don't see anything terribly positive. Obviously, I'm not at the meetings, you know, in the way that Sandra is. She, you know, she sees where things might be moving forward. But from the outside, it seems to me that there's naught being done apart from talking.
Okay, I would slightly challenge that view, Eileen, if you go down to the Ennis site at the airport, which is a City Regional Cabinet City Deal project as well.
I will grant you that.
Yeah, I think we're obviously focused on the airport rail link as a project in itself. Councillor Neil Graham, I think first, then Councillor Doig.
Thanks, Chair. I just would like just one point clarified by yourself, if that's okay. Did you agree with, obviously as Chair of the Leadership Board and on the City Deal Cabinet, did you agree with the outcome of the City Deal Cabinet decision to delegate lead authority status to Glasgow for a Renfrewshire project? Was there a vote, and if so, how did you vote, and did you agree with the outcome of it?
I can certainly say to you there wasn't a vote because it was a joint project between Renfrewshire and Glasgow Council. As I said right at the start of the meeting, I'd actually asked the officers to look at the airport rail link with a view of having it extended into the Ennis site, simply because we know, well, I'm aware, we know there may be issues with surface access roads getting to that site. So it made sense to look at it. If something significant happens with regards to the investment that we secured from the Scottish Government and the UK Government in that site, if something significant, it'd actually be quite remiss of us not to look at the potential for extending the airport rail link into the Ennis site. And it would also touch a lot of the issues with regards to climate change, car usage, alternative modes of transport. So there was no vote held at the City Deal. I'd raised this with them as a potential of looking at it. And obviously, if the potential was there, we would look at how we invest that extension. As I said before, Glasgow City Council carried out quite a quick review because they saw an opportunity with getting something into the Scottish Government's transport review with regards to a metro system. And that started the conversation about how the link the airport up to of a metro system. So there was quite a lot of robust discussions. Myself and the Chief Executive attended. We haven't relinquished control. We've actually insulated the Airport Rail Link connection from Paisley-Gilmer Street to the airport. It's the first project and the first priority project. It will be considered as the first stage of the metro system, as and when that review for that's carried out. So as I say, it was a discussion that was held, and it made complete sense to look at what eventually would be the connection between the airport, Paisley, and then at some point in the future onto the Glasgow airport, onto the Glasgow Connect metro system in that respect. So that's what happened, as I say. And if you want to go look at the minutes of City Regional Cabinet as well, they're available to look at as well, to see the process that was carried out on that. Okay, Councillor Doig, I think you're next.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. I think I think you hit the nail on the head, Ian, when you said there's a lack of voting on within the City Deal Cabinet. I think I'm correct in saying that's what you said. And I think this is really at the whole nub of the issue that Councillor McIntyre has raised, legitimately so, about mission creep, if you like. What's been sold to Renfrewshire initially as a partnership has suddenly, in some senses, in terms of procurement, it seems to have become a takeover. And this is what I've been warning about all along. And I have to say to Councillor Eddie Devine and the Labour group, I don't need lectures from Eddie Devine and the Labour group about what my constituents in Johnstone feel about the situation, about their being left out by the City Deal project. It was the Labour group who signed this deal in 2014. And when Councillor Devine talks about it's all very Glasgow based, was there no insight within the Labour group at that time to understand that this would happen? I think it was a very detrimental decision that the Labour administration took. They had no foresight about what could happen.
Andy, I'm appreciating your pushback on that one. As I say, the facts are as they stand. The Airport Rail Link is still a project. It's still there. And as I said before, at the risk of repeating myself, it'd be completely remiss of any council, including myself, not to look at significant changes that occurred. The projects are not, prior to spades in the ground, the projects are still in a state of implementation. And when Ennis and the Ahmed site turned up, we had to look at how the airport then connects into that site. That's the point I'm making. So the
point I was making, I was answering really essentially the point made to Councillor Devine that somehow Johnstone should be grateful for any crumbs off the City Deal table.
Well, no, okay, we've had this discussion as well. The City Deal is what it is just now because of the way it is structured and set up. As I said earlier, hopefully that will change if and when the projects that we have just now are delivered, and that can be a matter for future councils, etc., to have an input into all that. Okay, Councillor McIntyre, I think you indicated back on again.
Yeah, thanks. It was really just to Councillor McCartan, just points and multiple stops. I just wanted to clarify what my point was here. All these projects have to go through a business case and they have to show that they will work and have a certain return. I'm not against having multiple stops, linking up business parks, linking up the hospitals, but the problem we have is we have rejected schemes that had a positive business case because they were based on getting people to the airport with as close to a direct service as you can. If you put in a different scheme where it's suburban and it's taking all sorts of people, that is a completely different type of project. And I fear that when we get to it and we get advised, it will have a terrible business case and it won't proceed because of that reason. So it's not because I'm against linking any of these areas up. I'm not. If you look at Hillington, huge business park, far bigger in terms of number of people than the advanced manufacturing and Amos will have. 2 railway stations, not heavily used at all. It's a great idea to try and link these things with public transport, but there's unlikely to be the numbers to justify mass transit to these stations. And if we're worried about climate change, one of the biggest and undersold impacts of the Glasgow Airport rail link was it would have taken traffic off the M8 and the White Cart Viaduct into Glasgow. That would have been the biggest impact. We might not have been able to have linked all the different parts of Renfrewshire and all the business parts, but there would have been an overall gain there, and we would have taken traffic off the M8. It would have been less pollution, and we would have connected it to the airport. And I think a metro system is just a very different animal, and I don't think it'll. I think it's too ambitious, and I think we've really missed out here.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm not seeing other indications. That was a pretty good discussion and debate about this particular issue. And as I say, if there's any reassurances I can give to elected members, I'm happy to do it with regards to the airport rail link. As I say, we'll have updates on this at future meetings of Leadership Board as well. And if anybody wants to seek further information about it, I'm more than happy to try and facilitate that, so that there's a level of surety put into this particular issue. Okay, with that, can we then agree item 7, recommendations? Okay, agreed, thank you. Item 8, Scottish Government Clyde Mission Fund. Okay, and I see we've got an amendment from Councillor Shaw. John, have you got the...
Yeah,
can you post it up in the chat box?
I think Lillian's going to stick it in the chat box. You want me to read it out just now?
Okay.
So it's section 4.4 on page 76. The last sentence states, all on-street routes will seek to minimise any disruption to existing businesses or residential car parking arrangements. Is to remove that sentence and replace it with, where the route travels through existing residential or business areas, there will be no loss of parking or amenity.
Okay. Yeah, have you got a seconder?
Yeah, Lisa Marie, Councillor Hughes is my ward colleague, is seconding it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm quite happy to take that amendment, because I don't think it significantly changes the project or the processes in it. It sort of sets a benchmark for the officers and the designers to go away and meet that criteria. Any comments? Sorry, Cathy,
sorry,
see you.
Can I just come back in there?
Sure.
Yep. Sorry, you're right. I think it was. This has been progressed at great speed for good reason, because the funding was becoming available. So we're homologating the progression of this project. We're also going to be homologating the award of the contract. So this is actually the only time before this thing's designed and built that it's likely to come before a council board. So it's just important that we get it in here. But thanks for accepting.
Okay. Councillor McEwen, again, back.
Right, thanks, convener. Other than the amendment, which I completely agree with, I don't think it will come as a surprise to anybody that I'm absolutely delighted when the news of a much needed cycle and walkway, like myself, anyone who's walked from Renfrew to Paisley or vice versa, or even attempted to cycle from Renfrew to Paisley, know how difficult it is when you actually get to the part where you have to cross over either the entrance or the exit to the M8 motorway. This route offers a passage, a safe passage between Renfrewshire and Paisley. They're two of the largest towns in Renfrewshire, and it is so badly needed. I'm delighted with this. I also would like to congratulate all the officers who were successful in gaining this funding from the route from the Scottish Government. Well done. I look forward, absolutely look forward to using this path, and would look for agreement today in accepting the funding, which uses the old railway line from Renfrew to Paisley and links up beautiful river walks businesses and education facilities. And can I just also say, I know all the work that has been done over the years from volunteers to clear up the old railway line. They are absolutely going to be delighted with this. So let's crack on. We get this cycle path and walkway in place. It's ticking all the boxes. Let's get it done. Thanks, Convener.
Right, thanks very much for that. Eileen?
Yes, thanks, Ian. Can I say first of
You're on mute, Eileen, before you go too far.
Sorry. Kathy, before I say anything else, can I say that that river walk that you suggested to me last week, we did it and it was fabulous. You know, on the whole, I think that it obviously is moving in the right direction. We want to get more people using cycle paths, footpaths, etc., and all the particular areas between Renfrew and Paisley. It's absolutely essential. What I am very concerned about is what happened in over the last year, where cycle paths started springing up or being produced, and I know we've talked about this, Ian, and they were being put 20 yards from the Sustrans cycle paths, so that I'm thinking in particular around the West End of Paisley. The Sustrans cycle path is particularly good at that point, and yet there was people, the staff were trying to create other cycle paths, going along Canal Street and places like that, and it literally was 20 or 30 yards from the Sustrans track. So all I ask is, when these tracks are being looked at, when the money is being spent, when it's being all introduced, please look at what's already there. Look at perhaps improving some of the systems that are already there. And I know there's issues about Sustrans. Make sure that we're not duplicating what is already there and utilising the funding to the absolute max to make sure that we have the new tracks, new areas. I mean, one of the things that concerns me, for example, and I hope it will be taken into account, is where the Sustrans cycle track breaks at Elderslie, and you have to go up onto the main road and then eventually you get back on. If things can be done to look at that, that's absolutely great. But not to be putting paths which are parallel to what we've already got and 20 yards away. Please, a bit of common sense is what will be needed in this.
Okay. I'm not sure if you're needing an officer to respond to that one, but you're right, Eileen, the conversations that we have is about trying to direct any resources we get or we do have into plugging the gaps in existing cycle routes as well, and then connecting up ones with each other. That's part of the whole process as well. So I think your comments are welcome on that. Marie, Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, just to verify for Eileen that the Johnson missing link is being reviewed at the moment. What I need to make clear to members, when we were originally looking at the cycling, the money we were given was we were to spend it very quickly with a very short time. Also, Sustrans had been quite specific of how it was to be spent, and it was to be on maiden routes, so that it became part of the actual transport link rather than a leisure facility. So that was the reason for that. But we've taken that on board and we're looking at it as similar to what Eileen and others have suggested.
Okay.
I thought Andy Doig was our missing link, our Johnson missing link.
Yeah, I think it's the Elderslie missing link.
Sorry, Elderslie. I meant to say Elderslie. Sorry. I must have been thinking about you, Andy.
Right, no cross chatting across the chamber. Right, that's thanks for that. I don't see any other comments here. Can we agree? I'm moving the report with the amendment attached. Is that agreeable? Great.
Agreed.
Thank you. And then item. Councillor Patterson seconds that one. Item 9, museum policies, repatriation. Councillor Hughes, Lisa, Marie.
Thanks,
Full
Ian.
title.
very odd calling you chair, so thanks, Ian. I just want to speak very briefly on this because we've had a decent length meeting already and I'm sure people want us to finish up. But obviously we've had a lot of discussions over the past year, particularly after the significant Black Lives Matter movement, about how we can better have an anti-racist society and what as a council we can do. And obviously Renfrewshire Leisure is funded by the council to deal with things like our museum collections. And one of the things that's been talked about a lot in museums right across the world just now is how we decolonise museums and how we sensitively deal with things and speak to people, because as we're all aware, I think we have to be honest about the fact that some museums have things that they perhaps shouldn't have or that have been ill-gotten. So the policy essentially means that the officers can work through if we have any requests for specific items where what the ethics are and what we should do to repatriate or not repatriate things, so that we know that our collections are being kept in a way that's ethical and sensible and sensitive. So I hope everyone is supportive of it.
Okay, thanks for that. Andy. Oh, you're on mute.
Don't tell him, Ian.
I feel obliged to do it.
Thanks, Councillor Devine. Thank you, Ian. Councillor Lisa Marie Hughes makes a very pertinent and valid point that all museum collections everywhere in the world need to look. Most of these acquisitions were gained through colonial ill gain and the ambition of empire, not just the British Empire, but other empires in Europe. So my specific point is, I think I agree with the general thrust of the paper. I think if we get to the point where we have identified remains that need to be repatriated, can we make sure it's accomplished sensitively in keeping and in relation to any faith or religious elements that Indigenous culture might feel is appropriate? So what I'm saying is, if we do feel we've got some Egyptian artifacts and we feel quite rightly that they should be in Cairo rather than Paisley, I think when we get to the point of sending them back, we should have the closest kind of consultation with the Egyptian authorities. And I'm using that as an example to make sure that these are repatriated in accordance with Egyptian religious tradition.
I'm happy to bring Victoria in, but Andrew, you have my assurance that that's certainly what I would expect to happen, and I'm sure Eileen, who's also in the board, would expect the same as well. Victoria, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Thanks, Councillor Doig, for your comments there. Yes, just to reassure that obviously that's the emphasis behind both of these policies dealing with these ethical issues. And I want to point out that thanks to the funding secured for the museum project, it's thanks to researchers now being able to look into the collection that we can understand more fully the items that we have within the civic collection. And a lot of what we're talking about here in terms of why certain items have become part of the civic collection for Renfrewshire is unknown, and that is a lot of the work that's going on. And where we have identified items that come from very different communities to our own, and some of the items under consideration within that sort of bracket, if you like, where we're revealing more and more information about them, they come from the Southern Hemisphere, often Pacific communities. We are working in a very positive partnership arrangement with members of those communities to help us understand and identify those items. And certainly for some of those communities, they do have very specific sort of sacred resonance with their communities. And at the moment, those partnerships and that working together is on a very, very positive footing. And at the moment, we don't have any live requests for any return. But the important thing is that we are recognising those issues. They are much debated at the moment within the museum sector, as Councillor Hughes has said, and that we are equipped and prepared for the proper way to address them should we get a request of that nature. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Everyone okay with that one? Okay. Can we agree item 9, museum policies and recommendations? Agreed. Okay, item 10, Renfrewshire Leisure Limited annual report. Councillor Hughes and then possibly Victoria, if she wants to make a few comments on that, and then Councillor Cameron after yourself, Lisa Marie.
Thanks, Ian / Chair. I just want to recommend the report to my colleagues. We've tried to make it readable and interesting, and to make sure that people can see their own areas in it and the breadth of work that's been doing. I think often people can think of Renfrewshire Leisure as very building based, and the work that we do in buildings is incredibly important, but the work that we do in communities is also very important. We do it with people from birth till the very end of their life, and it's important work. A lot of that work, obviously the report shows the work we did almost pre-pandemic. At the very end of this report time, we were going into the pandemic and we didn't really understand the impact of it. And a lot of this work has been ongoing in a very different way, but it's been continued. And given that I've got a platform to say it just now, I'm just going to do an Eileen and promote a couple of things that are ongoing just now. So the book festival, which the first book festival is reflected in the report, is online just now. It's brilliant. There are some events where we've had 1,000 attendees or more, which is great. It's a really good breadth, and there's a few more days and evenings of it, so please attend something if you can. And a couple of years ago, we allocated some money through our budget for a Libraries Direct service. It has two facets. So we have, not at the moment, obviously, because of the sensitivity around COVID, but we have people delivering library and museum services into care homes. And over the period of the pandemic, we've also had people delivering books to those who are shielding, along with their packages, things like their packages of food. And their medication. We've widened that out now, and Libraries Direct has gone live, and people who are over the age of 70 and families with children or have a disability can go online, use a service or phone us and have their books delivered straight to their doors. That's live now, and I know that lots of colleagues supported it, so I just wanted to make you aware and tell you to tell your constituents about it, because the more people we have using the service, the better. And now I will be quiet and let Victoria speak.
All right, thank you. We'll have Councillor Cameron first. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same about the Paisley Book Festival. I've went to a few events and it's been really good, and it's great that it's going ahead even remotely, and looking forward to going back in person in the years to come. Yeah, as Lisa Marie said, obviously this is pre-COVID, and I just wanted to acknowledge that how difficult a year it's been for Renfrewshire Leisure in terms of income generation, but also how much we appreciate the collaboration with HSCP and the council in terms of the community hubs, and obviously the test centres and vaccination centres, and just to thank the staff and Lisa Marie and Victoria for all the work that they've done in this.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm not sure if Victoria wants to comment on any of the aspects of the work that's been done.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholson. Well, just first of all to say thank you very much to Councillor Cameron and Councillor Hughes for those welcome comments and feedback. And I can say personally, I'm enjoying the book festival very much this year. And I know it wasn't something that the team wasn't a position that they hoped they would be in, but actually I think it's a great example of, again, another service offer where we've been able to pivot very, very successfully onto a digital platform, and that's been massively important. And just to really highlight that, yes, it has been a very different year for us in 2021, but nevertheless, whilst we had disruption to normal services, we've been able to support communities and the delivery of services in very different ways, in alternative ways, which have been very successful. Councillor Hughes has highlighted the fantastic work of the Libraries team to deliver Libraries Direct and to work very closely with the neighbourhood hubs, with our partners in the council. We've also seen huge increases in some of the work we've delivered online. So library e-lending, just sticking with libraries for the moment, we've seen that increase by 70% for the e-lending of books, 45% increase for the lending of e-magazines. So we are still able to deliver a number of our services just through alternative means. And for some of the young people that we support, sometimes we've found that actually their engagement has increased because of the shift to digital platforms, where they've found a greater comfort and ease in engaging with service areas because of that. And again, supporting young people's opportunities to create, to generate experience and qualifications through our coaching opportunities through the Renfrewshire School for Sport Excellence. We've actually been able to increase the number of opportunities for pupils across Renfrewshire through having to pivot onto an online platform. So there's a huge breadth of excellent work that the teams have been delivering, and I have to say they've been enormously proud to serve their communities in a very different way, and in some respects in increased numbers. So I just wanted to thank everybody for their recognition, and we look forward to continuing with that delivery next year as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Victoria. Andy.
2 points, Kevin. I'd like to ask, well, firstly, I'd just like to give a plug for the Lochrannoch Arts Festival, which is the premier community arts festival in the whole of Renfrewshire. It's unfortunately online this year, but they're looking to have as big an impact this year as they've had in previous years. The specific question I'd like to ask Victoria is, there's a number of projects that we understand have been held back through COVID, Ian. One being the upgrade of the MacKillop Institute in Lochrannoch, the library in Lochrannoch, and the Steeple Hall in Kilbarchan. Community groups there have been asking me quite strongly if they can get some kind of idea of a timescale. I know it's hard to predict, but you know, RLL must have some kind of working timescale. I don't necessarily need a verbal answer right now. If Victoria could maybe email me in the next 2 or 3 days.
Happy to do so,
Okay.
Councillor Doig.
Right, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, that'll be fine. As I say, there's been a lot of obviously with COVID, there's been a lot of disruption to the improvement works in a lot of different places and a lot of different sort of reasons, and they're all at different stages as well. So as I say, hopefully Victoria will be able to give you an update on that, the specific ones in your area. Okay. I don't see any other questions on that one. Can we then agree recommendations in item 10, annual report? Agreed? Great, okay, thanks for that. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting, and thanks everyone for your attendance and for your contribution today. Pretty lively in places, which is actually quite, that's the way it's supposed to happen. So thanks for everyone for your attendance today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.